Wait for it. What's gonna happen?
4.
Mm-hmm.
4.
This episode is all about timers and how I've been using them as a tool for teaching math, as well as helping with kind of meltdowns and self-regulation. And I didn't need timers in the beginning when we first started working on this. What worked the best, honestly, was just asking my toddler before we moved from one thing to the other, are you done? And then asking, are you almost done? And just the process of letting him know that we were about to move on to the next thing, solved almost all of our problems in the beginning, right? We didn't really need to define how much almost meant. But as situations got more complicated, as he started saying on his own, I'm almost done, over and over and over again, it became necessary to sort of quantify what exactly almost means. And so that's why I created this 5-minute timer you see ticking here that counts down 5 minutes by having a dot disappear, sort of like a pie that's being eaten away. And it's not super techy. I just, created the video, saved it on my phone. And so I pull it up and just sort of fast forward to, whatever amount of time I want to set, whether it's 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 minutes, show it to him, and then, we watch it go down. And one of the fun things about this timer is that there are certain parts of the countdown that are more fun to watch than others, because when it goes from one number to the next, they actually rearrange, and that's what you see Henry watching for in the beginning. So let's break down what's happening in that situation, and then look at some of the other strategies I've developed for kind of talking about these pictures with him.
What do you see?
So what he's saying there is "обрезается," which is Russian for to cut or cut off. And it's the same word he would use if he was talking about like trimming bushes or cutting a piece of paper. And so I guess in his mind he's seeing the dot being sort of cut away little by little, which I get.
Wait for it. What's gonna happen?
Now, so one of the reasons I think he's waiting for the next one, or he's taken an interest in this, is because when we say, well, how much time is left, and I point to the timer, he'll always say whatever the canonical representation is. So in this case, 5, or like, whatever shape they're in. But the next thing I ask, if he says, oh, it's 5, I'll say, is it almost 4? Or if he says it's 4, I'll say, is it almost 3? So here we see that word almost, doing a lot of heavy lifting. And
4.
So I wanted to make this clip the focal point of this video because it's one of the first times that I really saw Henry consistently naming numbers, even just the canonical, shapes that I show him a lot. So maybe it's a coincidence, he started to get it right about the time that we introduced the timers. Or maybe the timers, had something to do with kind of putting him over the edge there. That said, there's a whole lot of other things that, we do throughout the week related to math that, aren't going to make it into an entire show. But I do want to do a quick segment where I just kind of break down kind of like all the things that happened throughout the week that we did that, may or may not be worth a whole episode. Okay, welcome to This Week in Henry, where I just sort of get to share random things that we did throughout the week, whether or not they have to do with math. This one, in fact, does. As you can see, it's very old, it's falling apart, but it's a little number path that I made and put little magnets behind a while ago. so that he could use these little magnetic number plushies to kind of sort the numbers and put them in order. And he didn't pay much attention to this in the beginning, but like as of late, he started looking at it a lot more, and he can actually sort of match things up and at least use the visuals to show where the number is. But then also I think because he's learning to count a bit more, starting to understand and get some intuition about where they should be. So that's a fun one. Probably follow up on that another time. Okay, again with the plushies, we are now cooking plushies on the waffle iron, which we play with for better or worse. And I started saying, well, like, how long should we cook the 5 for? And so we said, okay, we're going to cook the 5 for 5 seconds. So we put the 5 in, count to 5, put the 7 in, count to 7. And so that was just sort of like a one-off little way of incorporating some math. To be honest, he thought that was a lot of fun. And I don't know, maybe we'll do it again. Okay, so here we are at IKEA, where we go to kill time and have fun sometimes. I'm trying to get him away from the sink because we've picked out our stool and we're ready to go. He's refusing to get away from the sink. He's refusing. So I go ahead and I set a timer. It does not work. I have to eventually bribe him with snacks. Not all good advice. All right, folks. So I think I'm going to wrap things up. It took me a while to get this episode out because I kept overcomplicating things, and I think that's because there's probably a lot more to talk about, but I wanted to make things as simple and as helpful as possible for parents that might be interested in trying this timer thing out for themselves. And so if there's one thing I would leave you with, it's really just those two simple questions. How much time is left? 4. Is it almost 3? How much time is left? 3. Is it almost 2? I had a bunch of other ideas for, different questions that you could ask or ways that you could talk about the timer, but for where Henry's at right now, those are the only two that I can really say were super effective and really, took me a long way. But before I go, I did want to share one more thing following up on this week in Henry, which for this episode is actually 2 weeks. He went back to cooking numbers all on his own, and he decided to cook the 8, and here's what happened.
Are you cooking it?
8.
Close it down. 8.
8.
All right.
So he didn't count all the way up to 8 like I did, but I wanted to share this because I like that he actually circled back to the activity and did it on his own. I'm always afraid that like when I try to add math into something, he's going to see it as contrived or like I'm trying to shoehorn it into his day. But the idea that we would cook the plushie numbers, we'd close it, and we'd count still seemed fun to him on his own. And so no, he's not counting and correctly counting for 8 seconds. But he's still, voluntarily engaging in the activity, and I think that that's really something that we can work with.